You grab Starbucks in the exact kind of moment when you do not want to think too hard. You're at a station, half awake and underdressed for the weather. You're at an airport convincing yourself holiday rules apply to coffee prices. Or it's one of those damp British afternoons where a hot drink in a familiar cup feels like a minor act of self-respect. Starbucks still sells that moment brilliantly. The logo looks safe. The seasonal names sound comforting. The whole stop is supposed to feel easy. Then the bill lands. The drink's fine, but not fine enough for the price. The queue still drags. The branch feels more practical than cozy, and somehow a quick coffee stop leaves you feeling a bit ripped off. That's where Starbucks starts losing people in the UK. It still wants to feel easy, reliable, and worth the extra money. Too often it just feels expensive, hit or miss, and more tiring than it should. Why does a simple Starbucks run feel so pricey now? Why does the app promise speed and still leave people waiting? Why can one branch feel decent and the next feel like a service station gamble? And why does a coffee chain come with so much extra baggage? We investigated Starbucks UK's pricing and rewards pages, nutrition data, App Store complaints, customer review patterns, and the latest business coverage to see what's really going on. Once you line it all up, the brand gets a lot harder to defend. 1. The price sting hits before the coffee does. The first problem is the one you feel instantly. Before the drink has done anything impressive, Starbucks has already asked you to spend like this is a premium experience. The Guardian reported that UK prices rose again in 2025, with a cappuccino hitting £4.70 and a caramel macchiato reaching £6.10. That is not casual chain coffee territory anymore. That is the kind of pricing that makes people start grading the whole experience much more harshly. And that harsher mood shows up in ordinary customer reactions. One recent Trustpilot reviewer said a regular pumpkin spice latte with cream cost £5.60. Another customer said 2 tall cappuccinos came to nearly £8 and still tasted like hot-watered milk. That is the real damage. Once the number on the till starts looking silly, the old Starbucks excuse of fine, it's a little treat, stops doing much work. The price becomes the first thing you notice and the last thing you forgive. That is why this reason has to come first. Same logo, same grab-and-go habit, more money, less patience. And once the price has already put you in a bad mood, the app had better deliver on convenience. That would be lovely if the app itself did not sound like its own side quest. 2. The app promises a shortcut and then turns into extra faff. On Starbucks' own site, the pitch is almost comically clean. Order and pay, then breeze in to pick up your drink. The brand calls the app the best way to order ahead and says your coffee run has been made easy. That is a great promise because it sounds like the exact thing busy people want to hear. It is also a dangerous promise because once you say that out loud, every bit of friction feels twice as annoying. Then you look at the complaints and the fantasy starts wobbling. On Apple's UK App Store, one reviewer called the app slow and unresponsive and said the location screen could take a minute or two to load. They also said the favorite store feature saved 0 or negative time, and that even basic steps like changing payment method or switching from eat-in to takeaway dragged. Starbucks' own help page quietly adds to the picture. It says stars can take up to 24 hours to appear, some locations are excluded from rewards, and customers may need to deal with missing balances, vanished cards, sign-in issues, and checkout trouble. That is a lot of maintenance for a coffee app. That is why this lands with common viewers. Nobody cares about app architecture. They care that the faster option can end up feeling slower, fiddlier, and more annoying than just walking in and ordering like it is still 2014. When the shortcut becomes another chore, the whole brand pitch starts slipping. Then you get to the branch itself, and that is where the experience becomes genuinely unpredictable. 3. One branch feels fine, and the next feels cursed. A pricey chain can survive. A slow chain can survive. A random chain is where trust starts dying. That is the bigger issue with Starbucks now. It no longer feels like one experience. It feels like a loose federation of wildly different moods sharing the same cup design. On Trustpilot, Starbucks' UK profile sat at 2.0 out of 5, with 1,749 total reviews when checked, and 63% of them were 1 star. That does not prove every branch is bad. What it does suggest is a brand with a serious consistency problem. Trustpilot. And the stories feel different enough to make the point stronger. One customer described dirty tables, litter on the floor, and badly attached hot drink lids in Hemel Hempstead. Another said their Sheffield railway station visit was slow because staff were busy talking. Another complained that a Knightsbridge order marked no cream and almond milk was still made wrong. Then on the other side, you have people praising staff in Peterborough, Edinburgh, Kirkcaldy, and elsewhere for being warm, efficient, and genuinely lovely. That split is exactly the problem. A dependable chain gives you a dependable result. Starbucks is asking you to pay premium prices for a spin of the wheel. That roulette feeling makes everything else harder to excuse. When a branch is clean, friendly, and switched on, the brand still works. When it is scruffy, slow, or sloppy, the premium feels insulting. And once the basics start feeling shaky, the more indulgent drinks stop looking fun and start looking faintly ridiculous. 4. Some of the drinks are basically dessert-wearing coffee shop branding. Then you get to the menu items that sound soft and harmless right up until you look at the numbers. The NHS says adults should have no more than 30 grams of free sugars a day. Starbucks UK's current nutrition guide shows a venti caramel frappuccino with whole milk at 52.8 grams of sugar and 403 calories. A venti Java chip frappuccino with whole milk comes in at 55 grams of sugar and 465 calories. Even the venti Uber vanilla velvet latte with semi-skimmed milk hits 41.8 grams of sugar. So yes, one drink can take you past the NHS daily free sugar guidance in a single hit, and not by a little. What makes this reason work is how ordinary the trap feels. You are not ordering something called Sugar Grenade 9000. You are ordering things called Caramel Frappuccino, Java Chip, or Uber Vanilla Velvet. They sound like treats, not nutritional jump scares. That is the twist. The drinks are sold with cozy language and soft colors, but the numbers read like pudding in liquid form. Even checking the numbers is less smooth than it should be. The same App Store review that slammed the app for being slow also complained about how much loading was involved just to do basic things. That matters because Starbucks wants the whole ecosystem to feel frictionless and a bit rewarding. Once you start noticing how much work is involved, the loyalty scheme stops feeling like a perk and starts feeling like the next little trick. 5. The reward scheme looks generous until you do the maths properly. Loyalty schemes work best when you stay slightly hypnotized by the sparkle. Starbucks leans into that hard. The company says you earn 10 stars for every £1 spent, can start redeeming from 130 stars, and hit gold at 2,500 stars. Its own rewards page dresses that up with lines about adding a little sparkle to your day. On paper, that sounds friendly. In practice, it sounds better than it feels. 130 stars is roughly £13 in spend before you get something like a filter coffee, hot tea, or signature Americano. Gold means about £250 in yearly spend. The maths is what quietly kills the magic. A £4.70 cappuccino earns about 47 stars. 3 visits still do not get you to the first redemption line, and gold, which sounds like a nice casual reward tier, is really asking whether you are willing to give this chain a regular slot in your budget for the entire year. That is before you get to the annoying fine print that some stores are excluded from rewards altogether. Nothing says loyalty quite like discovering your loyalty works selectively. This is why the scheme feels sly rather than generous. It is not useless, it is just much less magical once you actually treat it like arithmetic instead of branding. And once customers start doing that calculation in their heads, the petty little annoyances around a visit feel even less forgivable, because now the chain is charging more, rewarding less romantically, and still finding ways to make a simple stop more irritating than it should be. 6. Even a basic stop can come with stupid little traps. The most shareable Starbucks story in Britain last year was not about a drink. It was about a parking charge. The Guardian reported on a driver who stopped at a Starbucks drive-thru near Stansted Airport, was told there were 60 minutes of free parking, stayed for 16 minutes, and still got a £100 charge. The reason was absurd. They were apparently supposed to register their car on an iPad inside the store, something not made clear at the drive-thru and impossible to do at the kiosk itself. The Guardian called it the most expensive latte in the UK. Fair enough. That is not a coffee stop, that is a prank with road markings. What makes that story stick is that it feels like an exaggerated version of a broader Starbucks problem. Small, unnecessary bits of nonsense keep attaching themselves to visits. On Trustpilot, one customer in Nottingham said they parked only to place an online order, found the items were out of stock, left within 7 minutes, and still got a parking fine later. Other reviewers complained about filthy toilets, missing items, wrong orders, staff asking people to leave within minutes of closing time, and little service glitches that should not matter but do when you are already paying premium money. That is the kind of irritation people actually remember. Not abstract brand strategy, not corporate language. The annoying label on the reusable cup, the ketchup that never made it into the sandwich bag, the dirty floor, the nonsense parking setup. The chain is supposed to feel smoother than the cheap option. Too often it feels like the full price option with bonus hassle. And once the hassle starts piling up, the wider baggage around the brand starts feeling less remote and more like one more reason to give up and go elsewhere. 7. The brand now drags a public argument into a coffee run. Then there is the part plenty of customers never signed up for. Reuters reported in late 2023 that Starbucks CEO Laxman Narasimhan said protesters targeting the company over the Israel-Hamas war had been influenced by misrepresentation on social media about what Starbucks stands for. The company has also said it does not have a political agenda and does not use profits to fund government or military operations. That balancing line matters. But it also does not erase the practical consumer problem once a coffee chain becomes part of boycott lists, online arguments, vandalism headlines, and constant comment section warfare. That consumer problem showed up in the numbers too. The Guardian reported Starbucks UK sales fell 4% to £525.6 million in the year to September 2024, with the company citing a challenging climate and a boycott linked to the Gaza conflict among the pressures on trading. Again, you do not need to settle the politics to understand the effect. A lot of customers simply do not want a basic coffee run to come with extra emotional or social weight. They want easy. Starbucks no longer feels easy in the same way. That heavier feeling matters even more because the brand was already asking people for more money and more patience than before. Once the name itself starts feeling loaded, the next step is obvious. People stop judging the company as a charming coffee house and start looking harder at the bigger corporate picture behind it. That is where the whole thing gets even uglier. 8. The corporate optics make the whole premium feel grim, zoom out from the counter, and the mood gets worse. The Guardian reported that Starbucks UK retail business paid no corporation tax for the year ending 29 September 2024, after posting a £35 million loss, despite generating £525.6 million in sales. More than £40 million went to the parent company in royalty and license fees. The same report said Starbucks opened 100 new British stores during that period, saw transactions fall, and raised prices again. Then, in a later EMEA update, Starbucks said it was still on track to open 80 new stores in the UK, while also closing some UK stores as part of a portfolio review. Starbucks has its own defense here. Its 2025 UK tax strategy says it aims to comply with tax law and manage tax risk responsibly. Fine, but from the customer side of the counter, the optics are still rough. You are being asked to pay £4.70 for cappuccinos, swallow shakier store experiences, tolerate app friction, and play along with a loyalty system that feels less generous once you do the maths, while the company's UK retail arm pays no corporation tax for that year and sends more than £40 million up the chain in royalty and license fees. Legally explainable and emotionally appealing are not the same thing. That is why this is the right place to end. The old Starbucks fantasy is a cozy little coffeehouse treat. The 2026 reality looks more like a huge brand charging premium prices, defending awkward optics, juggling openings and closures, and still too often delivering an experience that feels ordinary, messy, or mildly irritating. Once customers can see that wiring, the magic starts running out fast. That is why Starbucks feels harder to justify now. The brand still has pull, some drinks still scratch a very specific itch. And when you are tired, late, or stuck near a station, it still wins on familiarity. But it now asks for too much cash, too much patience, and too much goodwill for what is supposed to be a very basic purchase. If the stores felt more consistent, the app actually felt quick, and the rewards felt more rewarding, the premium might be easier to stomach. Right now, a lot of the experience feels like paying extra for the privilege of being mildly inconvenienced. Tell me the worst Starbucks experience you have had in the UK, and tell me if there is still one drink that keeps dragging you back anyway.